Thank you. Um, human rights. Human rights is something that me and my colleagues in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are discussing in New York, in Geneva, all around the world. But of course, human rights is not, say, what is happening in New York and in Geneva. It's happening on the ground. The people are not often aware in what kind of situation they are and also what their rights are. I remember when I came to one of my postings in Africa, then and where we had some programs on violence against women, and we wanted to fight the violence against women together with the African organizations who were responsible for that. I was on a trip in my first week, and I met a nice guy from the West, and the west of the country, and he wanted to tell me about the culture of the people of that part of Kenya. And he told me about birth, marriage, and death. And when it came to marriage, he said, well, it's wonderful, the marriage. And then, of course, what you need to do from time to time is beat your wife. And I was a little bit shocked, and I said, beat your wife? But why beat your wife? And he said, well, it's good for her. And of course, the wife, at the beginning, she might not like it, but she knows it's good for her as well. Well, that told me at least one thing, is that, say, human rights violations are everywhere. But it also told me that a lot of people are not aware of what human rights are and what their own rights are and what you can do and what you cannot do. And awareness is a very important thing. And when we talk about human rights, then we also should be aware that the awareness of human rights is quite low. What can we do about that? Well, we as diplomats, we only have this reach worldwide. We need partners, and partners who are able to get the message across. And what is the best way to do it? And of course, word is a very, very good thing, you know, writings, but then you only reach the literate people. And then it's image. An image, my last posting was in South Sudan, and there I traveled to very remote areas, and areas where people had never seen an image, and least of all, an image of themselves. So when they looked into a mirror, that was a big, big thing. And what did they do? Always, they did a step backwards. Because for them, it was a little bit frightening, but also realization of what's going on. And that also showed me that image is very powerful. And why are we funding, say, a festival like Brave Talk? Because of the power of image. And when it comes to human rights, I think as well, is what you see is that people, artists, who are capable of, say, building images, making movies, that at the same time are also a mirror to society and a mirror to individual people, and make them do a step backwards and thinking, is that what we do? Is that what is our society? And I think that is the beginning, say, of a change in attitude towards human rights and in an improvement of the human rights situation worldwide. Therefore, I think it's wonderful that a movie like Court by Chaitanya can be shown here today and that we all can see what is happening. And I hope, that's what we think is a message that can get across what is happening in some societies and makes people aware. And I think that is the start of making human rights, improve human rights worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you very much, Chaitanya, for your wonderful film. Let's cut to the chase. How did the idea for this film come about in the first place?
Sorry. I think it's the same process with all my projects. This is what I've experienced even in the past, that it starts with something very trivial and silly. I get fascinated by something very silly. For example, in this film, it was just the humor that attracted me. About when I went to a lower court in Mumbai, I saw how disorganized it was, and the lawyers were not the best orators. The documents were misplaced. The witnesses were vague. Everybody was slightly bored. There were no mics, so everything that was happening was very in-house. And even if you were involved in the case, you couldn't make out what people were saying. And also, the language of discourse was outside of the purview of most people. It was very technical. So I just saw some scope for a Bong Joon-ho-esque courtroom, because it was nothing like I had seen in films. When I saw courtroom dramas on film or in TV, it was like very formal and very dramatic, and everything was so sharp. So I just felt like a complete antithesis of something like that would be very interesting. And I love doing research. I love interviewing people, exploring new worlds. So then, of course, when I went deeper down the rabbit hole, it became a completely different beast. And it's also a process of education for myself. I grow with the film, I grow with the script. And it's a lot of people's insights that come together to form the final script. So I think that's how it all came about. And also, I was very fascinated by the world of protest singers and cultural activists, because that has a very strong history in Maharashtra and all over India. So it was a good marriage of both the worlds coming together in the script. So,
but the film does have quite a strong political thrust in a way, in the sense that you see that there is a certain element of corruption, not to mention a certain element of inefficiency and apathy about the victims, about the accused, and the accused are entirely at the mercy of these people who keep saying, well, we'll postpone it and we'll adjourn and you're in custody for another couple of months. Did you see it as a political film when you were making it?
I mean, it's hard to ignore. The politics of it is hard to ignore. I mean, I'll be naive to say that it was apolitical and the politics is just incidental. Nothing is incidental in a film. So yeah, but I must say that was not my main motivation for making the film. I was more interested in the humanity of these characters, and I was very clear that it's very easy to paint heroes and villains and extremes, but the challenge was to lend dignity to the characters who are on the other side, or people who you probably don't like, or whose actions you don't necessarily endorse. I remember being inspired by a short film by Kieślowski called The Office, and it kind of switched the perspective, and that was very, very inspiring. So I was more interested in seeing what these characters are doing outside of the courtroom, where they're spending their holidays, what they are eating, where do they come from, what are their personal values, what is their cultural milieu. Because I realized that most people who are stuck in this system are not necessarily doing it out of an evil intention or because they have a personal agenda. But they're all operating like cogs in a wheel, you know. Yeah.
That's particularly obvious in the case of the prosecuting attorney, who's actually a very nice woman, but even though you sometimes think, why is she arguing this way? Right. Did you worry that this rather unusual narrative structure, where you go off away from the courtroom to follow the various characters in their very sort of dead moments almost, they're just eating and walking and not doing anything particularly important or dramatic, and also with the courtrooms being de-dramatized in a way, with the courtroom scenes, did you worry that you might risk losing an audience's interest, because it's quite a radical way of treating this material?
Yeah, for me, I was very clear that the scenes outside of the courtroom are much more interesting. And the courtroom scenes were obviously deliberately kept a little drab, a little monotonous, a little technical, and that was something that everybody warned us against. From a script level to the edit, everybody was like, why are you doing this? We get it. It's meant to be monotonous. It's meant to be, but really you have to know the boundaries that you're pushing. But that's what me and the editor always intention to do, and it works for some people and for some probably it doesn't. And like I said, I saw a lot of humor, and I was very amused by the scenes outside of the courtroom when I came up with them. Or certain people's lives inspired some of the scenes. It was very interesting for me to see the public prosecutor and a family attend this play with a right-wing propaganda, or for this 36-year-old, 40-year-old defense lawyer whose parents are
Always bickering, yes.
always bickering and asking about his marriage. It was, I mean, you could say it's slightly risky or something that you wouldn't expect, but that's exactly the reason why I decided to make the film. Because I'm not necessarily personally a fan of genre films. I mean, a courtroom drama would be the last thing I would be interested in if it was one of those paint by numbers.
Sure.
Yeah.
And am I right to think that most of the cast are actually non-professionals, that you did a big audition and they're non-professionals?
Yeah. So I was very clear from the beginning that I didn't want actors who have seen a lot on screen, films or television, to play any part in the film, because the tone of the film is realistic. We wanted Mumbai as a city to come alive, the courts to come alive. And I felt that personally, me as a person, as an audience, would get really bored, and I wouldn't believe these actors if they tried to play real people. So we had a very extensive casting process where we created a database of 1,800 people who had never faced the camera, who were only interested in the idea of acting and who didn't mind giving it a shot. So we approached railway employees, bank workers, teachers, maids, taxi drivers. We had to adopt a completely different approach to auditioning. And each audition would last about half an hour with each person, where we would just talk about their life, their stories, and where they come from. There would be no scenes in the beginning. And then there would be several rounds of auditions. And the final stage would be where they would be given a scene where they had scripted lines. And yes, even while shooting, we had to do many, many takes. Like on an average, we would do about 30 takes. And we've gone up to, I think, 67 takes.
Really?
And
I mean, they're quite long takes.
Yeah.
And for non-professionals to have to learn the lines and remember what to do.
Yeah, no,
which is quite difficult.
which is precisely why these number of takes, because if one thing goes wrong, if there's a single false note, you have to start right from the beginning. Even the court scenes where there is editing, at that time we were not sure how we were going to edit, so we would do 7-minute, 8-minute scenes at a stretch. And even if a single actor commits a mistake, we have to start all over again. And these are non-professional actors who are not only memorizing the lines, but also trying to find a certain level of truth.
Yeah. And did you have to do lots of rehearsals before this, or?
Not really. We did a few workshops with the actors, but I didn't see the point of rehearsing. We did have a few workshops where we would get a boom man and where we would make them very aware of the fact that a camera is being switched on later on during the auditions, because we wanted to see how these non-actors are performing under pressure. Because we knew that there would be 100 people. It's impossible in India to make a film with a small crew. Like, there will always be 100 people on your set, and of course people who are watching, because we would mostly be shooting on real locations except for the courts. So I kind of realized that too much of rehearsal wouldn't probably do us much help. So it was basically everything was done on set, and which is why we scheduled the production in a way where we would shoot only one scene a day. Yeah.
And why did you choose to use these long takes? Because it's a very distinctive style that you have here, and it's quite unusual for this sort of film.
Right. I think there were 2 or 3 things. One was, of course, when it comes to long takes, I think I have a personal relationship with it in terms of time and space. I really think that the illusion is much more convincing. I personally feel like I see the characters living and breathing when the editors or when the editing is not too invasive. I believe them more somehow. Secondly, because the film is objective, in it, it's not a subjective experience, it's a distant observation. I felt that the long takes kind of made sense. Otherwise, if there was too much of an interference, right? So I felt that would not be a good choice. And also on set, we just felt that this was the right way to go about it. Me and my DOP, we would start talking about coverage, and it just felt wrong. Everything just felt wrong. And after a few days, it became the language of the film, and then there were no questions anymore. Like, I remember 2 or 3 times we called a Steadicam operator for a few scenes, and it just didn't feel right. And then there was no question, like, this was the language of the film. It was challenging, but because it left me no room in the edit to change things or to kind of fix things.
It's I'm interested because you're actually dealing with, as we mentioned before, corruption and a certain amount of inefficiency, and it's not the most positive image of the establishment or the authorities. Has the film played much in India, and how has it been received?
So far, it has played at about 3 film festivals in India, and it was very, very well received. It was very warmly received by the audiences. One of the most common reactions we've got is that it's like looking at a mirror, because it's shocking to see on screen that this is who we are, or this is how things function, which I thought was very interesting. The film was screened for the censor board in India, and they've asked for 2 cuts. We've had to mute 2 dialogues, and we've now muted them in such a way that it's quite obvious that they've been censored. We were given the option to replace the dialogues, but we think it's ironic that a film which is talking about censorship has,
And are they particularly? Were they moments you expected to be censored, or?
Yeah, there was a general fear that this film could very well be banned. Because there is a law of sedition that is still in existence in India. It's a law from the Victorian times where you could not speak against the government. We still have that law. You cannot. There's no space for dissent. And I think in some way this film is dissenting.
Absolutely.
But the thing is that even though the film has been cleared by the censor board, when it releases in India, we are still expecting a few lawsuits. And we have had to sign an undertaking which says that the producer is completely responsible for any lawsuits that come our way. So we'll see, because it's a sensitive country and we don't know who will get offended by what. It's really hard to predict, which is also somehow shown in the film when the lawyer's face is blackened after he talks about some book in a almost empty courtroom. So
the protest singer, well, the folk singer, the accused anyway, he is actually an activist in real life.
He's a human rights activist, and he's a publisher of a magazine called Vidrohi. And he's got nothing to do with with being an actor, or he's not a singer. He's not even sung the songs. He's only lip syncing to the words. And he's actually a very simple man who does not even look like this. He's had a transformation in a way.
And one thing that I was really intrigued to learn about was the person who plays the widow of the sewage worker is actually the widow of a sewage worker, yes?
Not a sewage worker. Her husband was an ambulance driver, and he died in an accident. And she had to attend a lot of court sessions for the compensation. And she had to answer a lot of awkward questions, and she had to go through a lot of mental turmoil. And I think that experience kind of is reflected in the film when she's doing that scene. And we didn't know that's her story.
Really?
Yeah, we discovered that much later. She was just somebody who walked into the auditions, and we had auditioned her in a slum in Dahisar, which is one of the suburbs in Mumbai. And she was just really very, very good. And we just found out that this was her story. And it was a complete coincidence,
And have you had any feedback from the legal profession? Have they seen it at all yet?
Yeah, a few lawyers have seen it. And they told me that, you know what, it's a Sunday. We came to watch the film thinking we don't have to go to court today, but you took us back to the court, and it hits too close to home. So, and again, like I said, some of them said it's like watching a mirror. It's really an unusual experience.
Do you? I know you said when you started making the film, you didn't see it as a political film, particularly. It turned out that way. Do you see yourself continuing to make films which are about quite serious moral and social issues? Because this is not just about politics, it's also about class, it's about inequality. We see the different ways that people live in this film.
I don't know. It's the same thing happened with my short film. I'd made a short film which was also in Rotterdam 4 years ago. That was about tea tasting. It was about a tea estate owner, and that also, by the end of it, became about the violation of human rights and the contrast between producing the world's most expensive tea and being sold in an exotic package to the Western world and paying ridiculously low wages to the workers who are actually plucking the tea leaves. And again, with this film, the politics has just kind of crept in. So I don't know. I'm curious to see that myself. And of course, I think every piece of art is political in some way. It's very hard to be apolitical, and I have no problems with that. So I'm curious myself. Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about is the lead actor, or one of the lead actors in the film, Vivek Gomber, was also the producer of the film. And how was it directing your producer? Were you worried that you might upset him a bit?
Right. No, I don't think that was ever a concern, because we had worked in a play together where I had directed him. He was the lead actor. It was a play that I had written as well. And we'd been good friends, and I knew that he's an actor who completely submits to a director, and so yeah, it was fairly easy in that sense. Yeah, there were no problems.
Well, I think perhaps now is time to bring on Vivek, if he's here, and then we can please welcome Vivek Gomber, the lead actor and the producer. And if the audience would start thinking about your own questions, but in the meantime, I will ask you one question. How was it for you being the producer but being directed by Chaitanya? Was it okay, or did you sometimes think, oh, I'm not producing with you anymore?
Oh no, it's effortless. He's incredibly talented, and I guess because we had worked on stage together and it was a very different environment, and then you don't have the glamour of film or the cost of film. So it's really about, on a human level, you're trying to connect, and it's like 3 months of rehearsal. And at that time, he was also, I think, producing that play, and he was 21. So he was very level-headed, and the truth comes out, and yeah, no problems.
Okay, now, does any of you out there have questions? Because it would be nice if you did. Do you feel like coming down to the mic here, please, so that it would be great. That way we can record it.
Okay. Hello. The question is just about the fact that in the film, the character of the lawyer is quite obviously wealthy, much wealthier than any other character, and this is highlighted in several scenes: the supermarket, at the table, the fact that they live, the parents live in a building where there is a dedicated security, and the fact that it is so much stressed seems to want to deliver something. Can you comment on that?
Right. So again, that character was inspired by a lot of real-life lawyers and activists that I saw, who you would call like limousine Marxists. And it was a very... And I started out by thinking this is a contrast, but it really isn't. I mean, that's who they are. They grew up in a context where it was very natural for them to listen to jazz or for them to shop at a particular supermarket, but where also they have made these life choices where they want to dedicate their time and their efforts towards representing those or helping those who need help or who need representation. And I realized that this is not something that they're doing for others. They're doing this purely for themselves in a way, and it helps them find meaning for their own lives. And I thought it would be an interesting character. And a lot of people have said that it's also sad to know that in a way that only somebody wealthy could make a choice like that. But I don't agree with that. I think it just happens to be a character like that. So
I think it makes things more complex, doesn't it, to have for us to learn about these characters' background. Yes, I think we've probably got somebody else coming to ask a question.
Hello. I saw Dr. Ambedkar, court, and let's say the Constitution. Is there some kind of a triangle? You talk about Dalits, and were you also thinking about it? And how do you communicate that to the Western, let's say, media and people?
Right. I mean, it's really very hard to communicate the whole Dalit angle, because the main character, the singer, the protest singer, belongs to the Dalit community, who are traditionally regarded as the untouchables. And that's the thing with India, that apart from class, caste is a big divider. It's a big issue. And it's one of those elephants in the room that is guiding and influencing a lot of the decisions that people are making. It's a huge trigger, and yes, it's very difficult to explain that to to a Western audience without being really obvious about it, or without spoon feeding that entire element. But yeah, again, it's one of those things that kind of seeps into the script, and it very organically becomes a part of it, because it's hard to escape. Yeah.
Presumably
So it's your Mona Lisa a little bit, eh?
Yeah, maybe you could say so. Yeah.
Presumably the booklet that he's written
Yeah.
and is having published is also about protest against.
Yeah, because it's called A History of Humiliation, and and Dalit oppression has a very, very long history, thousands of years in India. So yeah.
Anybody else? Yes.
What I would like to know is, was it your intention to, by making this last part with the punishment, was it your intention to show us the absurdity of punishment?
Which part are you talking about exactly?
Well, the last part, when they scared the father, and someone who wasn't really the best, the best part of it.
Right.
Got hit.
Right. No, I don't think that's exactly what I was thinking about. I mean, for me, it wasn't a very literal form of punishment, but what I was interested in is an instinctive reaction of a human being whose privacy or whose entire being is violated, and what would the reaction be. So I was more interested in that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There was no suggestion that the sleep is not just literal but metaphorical, and maybe there's a need to wake up.
Right. I would let the audience decide, because I think that would be saying a bit much on my part. Yeah.
Anybody else out there? You don't absolutely have to come down if you want to ask a question from your seat.
What you see the movie, it's not really, it's, as you said, can be very critical, but it's very played out very slowly, not very aggressively. Though I want to say, did you get some aggressive reactions or not?
Right. I mean, the slowness can evoke a lot of aggression in some people who might think this is just plain boring, and why do I have to endure a slow court case? Because there is a psychological violence that's unfolding in the drabness and the slowness of how the trial is unfolding, which you would really experience for 10 years or 20 years if you had to undergo a trial in India. But yeah, so it was a very small representation of that aggression in a way. Apart from that, we are really looking forward to some aggressive remarks when the film releases in India. Yeah.
But you must have been very disappointed when you won the Best Debut Prize in Venice with it then. The film has had a very warm reception.
Right. No, I mean India, when it's released in India theatrically. Yeah, in Venice it was very, very warm. It was very nice. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes? Yes?
Was it hard to get funding for this film?
Not at all, because all the funding is right here. So yeah, maybe he should answer that question. Yeah.
No, initially our desire was to find a co-production. Our desire was to try and go through our institution funding, whatever options we have in India. But however, all of that was just taking too long, and we had a time schedule that we wanted to stick to, because we felt that if we don't move ahead with it, we'll just kind of fall away. And it was, so then
and there's not much of there's not much scope, or not too many avenues for institutional funding in India, and there's one body which did not approve the project. We did not get any funding from the body that exists in India, so it was all done through private equity by him. So Yeah.
And Hubert Ball's fun.
Also, yes.
Yeah, and
from
because
the
it was really
Rotterdam.
good to have them on board while we were developing and moving around, because at least we were able to have conversations with people, and I got to come here to do Producers Lab and things like that. So just when you have a conversation with someone, people who are a lot more senior than me, I mean, I'm a first-time producer, people were interested to at least know more about the project because of the reputation of Hubert Ball's Fund. So we're very thankful to the Rotterdam Film Festival for sure. Thank you.
Did somebody, yeah?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the Slowness, because I really enjoyed looking at everything that was there to see. So that was really, really nice. I have a question about the songs of the singer, and also, again, I so enjoyed, you know, the aliveness and the energy of the performance. I was wondering who wrote the songs, and maybe you can tell us some more about the whole culture of this singing. And the reason I'm asking is because the texts are very interesting. The first song is a little bit criticizing wealth. There's this text about going to the mall and something about the Great Fall. I don't remember, you know, quite well, but it's an interesting text. And the last song that he sings when he has been bailed out for the first time is very intriguing, because he sings something, I can't literally remember the words, but he's singing something like, don't mistake me for an artist. If you think I'm an artist, it's an insult. And I'm very curious to know, something about all of this. So again, why these lyrics, who wrote them, and some more questions or some more insight in the background of this.
Sure. Again, it was a very interesting process in terms of the songs, because I had written a very rough draft in English of the songs, because I can't write in Marathi myself. So, and then Sambhaji Bhagat, who has written and composed and sung these songs, had to adapt the basic idea of those songs into the traditional form of Povada. And Lok Shahiri, which is the traditional form of singing of Maharashtra. And then we had to subtitle it, so we had to adapt it again in English, so which was a tough task, because it's sometimes not possible to translate the nuances and subtleties of a particular language in another one. So in that sense, I'm very glad that the songs are being appreciated. And these songs have been, of course, written specifically for the situations in the film. And yes, Maharashtra has had a history of protest through songs and a history of cultural activists since the pre-independence. And it's sad, because that's a movement that's completely dying out right now. It's struggling for relevance. So in a way, it was also an attempt to capture a bygone era. Yeah.
Sadly, I think we've run out of time, but before we finish, I do hope we can see your next film, which will be a continuation of the case about the stolen money, the stolen watch. That's not really going to happen, I don't think. But I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd like to thank Chaitanya Tamhane and Vivek Gomber. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.